You know that moment when you finally lie down, the lights are low, the day is done, and somehow the room still feels awake. Your eyes land on things, a stack here, something you meant to deal with there. And even though your body's tired, your mind doesn't quite settle. It's not because you've forgotten something or because you don't have the energy you used to. Most of the time, it's just that the space is asking for attention when it should be offering rest. Bedrooms weren't meant to keep score of our days. They're supposed to hold us quietly, without commentary. I didn't realize how much that mattered until I felt the difference for myself. And if this sounds even a little familiar, stay with me for a moment. You don't have to do anything or change anything right now. Just listen and see if a few of these thoughts land where you live. It's late and the room is dark, except for the small glow of a lamp. You reach for your glasses or maybe a sip of water, and your hand brushes past a few things you didn't remember setting there. A book you meant to finish weeks ago, a receipt, a tissue, a charger that belongs somewhere else. And suddenly you realize your nightstand isn't resting with you. It's still busy, holding all the leftovers of your days. That little table beside your bed carries more than objects. It carries reminders. Every piece of paper, every forgotten cup, every "I'll deal with it tomorrow" quietly whispers that you haven't finished enough yet. And when your eyes land on that, the moment you wake up, it starts the day before your mind even gets a chance to breathe. For a long time, I thought those small piles didn't matter. They were harmless. But I started noticing how my mornings felt heavy before I'd even sat up. My brain was scanning everything that needed doing, and it hadn't even been 10 seconds since I opened my eyes. That's when I realized clutter isn't just what we see, it's what we feel. That flat little surface beside our bed becomes a tiny stage for unfinished business. And when that stage is full, our thoughts start performing whether we want them to or not. So I began an experiment. I cleared everything except what I truly reached for at night. My glasses, my phone, a small lamp. The first morning I woke up to that space, the difference was instant. My eyes rested before my feet hit the floor. There was no list waiting for me, no guilt, no visual noise, just air. And it's funny, peace doesn't make a sound, but you can feel it. That simple open space said, "You've done enough." It's not about minimalism or rules. It's about creating a place that lets your body and mind exhale together. When your nightstand stops working overtime, you start sleeping differently. You wake lighter. You stop carrying your to-do list to bed. Maybe tonight, before you turn in, just move one thing. Slide it off the surface. Let that little square of wood breathe. You might notice how the room feels softer, like it's sighing with you. And then something quiet will happen. Your attention will drift. You'll look past the nightstand to something else nearby that's been whispering for a while, something you've walked past without really seeing. It's as if once one space settles, the next one begins to speak up. We all seem to have that one chair, don't we? The one that started as a place to read, maybe to enjoy a cup of tea or fold some laundry for just a minute. And somehow, over time, it stopped being a chair at all. Now it's the halfway home for clothes that aren't clean enough to hang up and not dirty enough to wash. A shirt that might be worn again. A sweater that just needs to air out. The chair quietly accepted every compromise until it disappeared beneath them. It's still there, but now it's just a soft mountain of hesitation. I used to laugh about mine, calling it the maybe-later chair. But truthfully, it bothered me more than I admitted. I'd walk past it and feel a small tug of guilt, as if it were keeping score. And on the nights I tried to read there, it reminded me how many small decisions I'd postponed. Sometimes it even became a point of tension. Whose clothes are these? Followed by a sigh or a shrug. It's amazing how a simple pile can carry so much unspoken weight. One evening I stood in front of it and asked myself a question that changed everything. If this chair could speak, what would it say? I think it would whisper, "I was meant to hold you, not your laundry." And I realized that every time I left something there, I was giving the chair another job it never asked for. It wasn't helping me stay organized, it was helping me delay. So I cleared it. Every piece of clothing either found its home in the closet or the laundry basket. The chair came back into view, simple and unburdened, and when I sat down, I felt a calm I hadn't noticed was missing. No pile leaning against me, no half-finished choices in sight, just space. That one quiet change made putting clothes away feel less like a chore and more like an act of kindness toward myself. Now I notice something else too. When there's no mountain on the chair, it's easier to see where the next small resistance hides. Maybe it's a drawer that won't close easily, or a spot where folded laundry lingers a little too long. Once that chair breathes again, the whole room starts showing you where it's been holding its breath. There's a very particular feeling when you pull on a drawer and it doesn't quite agree with you. It sticks. You give it a second tug, maybe a little nudge with your hip, and for a moment it feels less like furniture and more like a quiet argument you didn't plan to have. It's small, almost laughable, but it has a way of wearing you down. Because every time that drawer pushes back, it asks for effort when you were only trying to put something away. I didn't notice how often that happened until I paid attention to how it made me feel. Folding laundry was fine. Getting it into the drawer was where the energy drained out of me. I'd pause, hesitate, sometimes leave the clothes sitting out for now. Not because I was lazy, but because my body already knew that the next step would be uncomfortable. Resistance, even tiny resistance, has a way of turning simple habits into things we avoid, and over time that avoidance starts shaping the room. What surprised me was how emotional it felt once I noticed it. A stuck drawer carries a message. There's too much here, and it's all pressing back at once. Not just fabric, but decisions, old choices, things kept out of habit instead of love or comfort. And when drawers are hard to open or close, the room quietly trains you to stop finishing small tasks. You don't even realize it's happening. You just feel a little more tired than you should. When I finally let those drawers breathe, something shifted. They opened without complaint. They closed with a soft, settled sound. And suddenly, putting clothes away didn't feel like work. It felt smooth, respectful even. The goal wasn't having fewer things for the sake of it. It was letting the space move with me instead of against me. Ease matters more than volume, especially as we get older. We've earned rooms that cooperate. The unexpected part came later. Once the drawers stopped pushing back, I became aware of how much had been crammed into them over the years. Not in a judgmental way, more like surprise. Oh, that's what's been in here all this time. When something opens easily, it tells the truth. And that truth has a way of pointing your attention gently forward, toward the next place where things are packed just a little too tight, waiting for the same kind of relief. It happens quietly, usually when you're not looking for it. You reach into the closet for something comfortable, and your fingers brush past shirts you haven't worn in years. Some still have good fabric, A few might even have the tag dangling. You pause, telling yourself you'll wear them again once the weather changes, or when you lose those few pounds, or for some occasion that never really arrives. Those clothes sit there like kind witnesses to old versions of you, taking up space and whispering stories that don't fit anymore. I used to believe keeping them was practical. After all, what if I needed them one day? But one morning I realized they'd stopped being clothes. They'd become quiet reminders of all the times I promised myself I'd be different. It wasn't guilt exactly, more like a low hum of expectation hanging in the air. I'd see them and feel it, that little voice that said, "You used to fit that, maybe again soon." And it's not that our bodies betrayed us. They simply moved on, as bodies do when they've carried us long enough to earn rest. So I started small. I pulled one hanger forward and said, "You did your job." I didn't throw anything out in a rush. I just acknowledged that some things had finished their purpose. A few were still lovely, but not for me anymore. Textures that now itch, waistbands that press where I need comfort. Releasing them wasn't wasteful. It was relief. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for too many seasons. And here's the gentle truth. Every piece that left made room for the clothes I actually wear. The soft ones that make mornings easier, the ones that fit who I am now. Dressing became simpler. The noise in the closet quieted. I didn't realize how much energy I'd been spending negotiating with fabric that no longer belonged to my life. There's a freedom that comes when the hangers slide easily, when every sleeve you touch is something that says yes to the person you've become. And strangely enough, once the clothes felt lighter, the rest of the room started to feel crowded. It's like your eyes begin to adjust, and you start seeing other places holding on to what's already finished, waiting for the same kind of piece to move through them next. You're lying there. The lights are low, and your eyes are open even though you're ready for sleep. Without meaning to, you start scanning the room. A picture frame catches your attention. Then another. Something on the wall that's slightly crooked. A shelf with a few objects you once loved but haven't really looked at in a long time. Nothing is wrong exactly, and yet it feels like the room is watching you back. Each item seems to say something. That picture reminds you it needs dusting. That decoration brings up a memory you're not in the mood to revisit tonight. That mirror reflects more than just the room. It reflects things you meant to fix, change, or move. Your brain, already tired, keeps entering these little visual conversations and can't find a clean way out of them. You close your eyes, but the room follows you there. For a long time, I thought filling the walls meant warmth, personality, life. And it did. Once. But over time, all that beauty started asking for upkeep, attention, decisions. Even the things I liked became part of the noise. I didn't feel inspired by them anymore. I felt responsible for them. And responsibility is a heavy thing to carry into sleep. There was a surprising sense of relief when I let some of it go. Not everything, just enough. Fewer frames, fewer objects, more blank space, and the room didn't feel empty. It felt kind. My eyes finally had places to rest. The walls stopped talking so much. Beauty became quieter, simpler, easier to live with. What I learned is that peace doesn't need decoration to exist. Sometimes it needs the opposite. It needs room. When the space around you isn't asking for anything, your mind doesn't feel pulled in 10 directions at once. It can finally settle, like a glass of water left alone long enough to clear. And once the walls stop competing for your attention, something else gently comes into focus. Your eyes drift downward. You notice what's around your feet. Things you step around without thinking. Things that don't belong there anymore. When the room grows calm above, the ground below starts quietly asking for the same kind of care. Stand still for a moment and look down. Not to judge, just to notice. The floor quietly tells the truth about how we live. Shoes kicked off after a long day. A sweater that slipped from a hook. Maybe a small bag waiting to be taken somewhere that never quite leaves the room. These little things gather at our feet the way thoughts do, one by one, until there's barely room to move without sidestepping something. It doesn't feel messy exactly, it just feels unsettled. I used to think clutter meant chaos, but it's often more like tension. The kind you can feel under your skin when you're trying to relax, but something in the room stays alert. The path from the bed to the door isn't smooth, and your body knows it before your mind does. You hesitate. Step wider. Reach for balance. It's a small, constant negotiation with your own space. Clearing the floor wasn't about perfection for me. It was about freedom. The first time I walked across the room barefoot without nudging something aside, it felt like my whole body took a deeper breath. There's confidence in knowing that nothing is underfoot to surprise you, that you can move freely without bracing yourself. It's such a simple kind of safety, quiet but powerful. So I started paying attention to what kept landing there. A pair of shoes I never wore anymore, a stack of magazines that didn't belong, a rug that shifted every time I walked on it, reminding me how much energy I spent adjusting it instead of enjoying it. One by one, I let the floor remember what it was meant for, to hold me, not my things. And once that space opened up, the feeling changed. The room seemed taller, lighter. My footsteps sounded softer. But as the floor calmed, my eyes began to notice something else. The things that still asked too much of me. The ones that required effort I no longer wanted to give. The items that couldn't just be lifted or brushed aside, but demanded real work every time I faced them. The heavy, high-maintenance things that might have once felt cozy, but now quietly stand between me and ease. I remember the moment clearly. The quiet struggle that didn't look like much from the outside. I was trying to shift a rug that had bunched up again, tugging at the corner, bracing myself the way you do when something is heavier than it should be. It scraped, resisted, caught on the floor. And when it finally moved, I felt it in my shoulders, my hands, my breath. I stood there for a second afterward, wondering when something meant to make a room feel cozy had started demanding so much from me. Some things in our homes slowly turn into energy taxes. Not all at once and not loudly. They ask for lifting, dragging, adjusting, straightening. They need vacuuming just so, shaking out, careful positioning so they don't slide or curl or catch your foot. Heavy furniture that once felt solid now feels stubborn. Thick rugs that once softened the space now feel like they're testing your strength every morning. None of it is wrong. It's just a lot. I started noticing how my body reacted before my mind caught up. The slight hesitation before moving something. The way I planned my steps around it. The small sigh that came with knowing I'd have to deal with it again tomorrow. That's when it clicked. Comfort shouldn't come with a price tag paid in joints and energy. We don't need to prove anything by wrestling with our surroundings. Our homes should meet us where we are now, not where we were years ago. Letting go of those heavy, demanding pieces felt like choosing kindness for my future mornings. Fewer things to push, fewer things to fix before I could even start my day. The room didn't lose warmth when they left. It gained ease. Moving through it felt smoother, quieter. My body stopped bracing itself without me realizing it had been doing that all along. And with the surface finally feeling light, something interesting happened. My attention wandered to the spaces I don't look at very often. The places out of sight, tucked away, quietly holding on to things I'd forgotten, were there. When the room above ground stopped asking so much, the hidden corners began to gently make themselves known, waiting for the same sense of relief. There's a quiet kind of weight that lives out of sight. You don't trip over it, you don't dust it, you don't even think about it most days, but it's there, tucked under the bed, holding on to things that were set aside with good intentions. Boxes you slid back just for now, clothes for a different season. Items kept because they might be useful someday, even if that day hasn't shown up in years. Forgotten doesn't mean gone. It just means waiting. I didn't realize how much that space affected me until one afternoon when I bent down to retrieve something that had rolled underneath. I caught a glimpse of what was stored there, and it felt like opening a drawer in my mind I hadn't looked into in a long time. So many just-in-case choices stacked quietly on top of each other. None of them were urgent. None of them were wrong. But together they carried a kind of pressure, like a promise I kept postponing. Those items weren't protecting me the way I thought they were. They were anchoring me to old seasons, old worries, old versions of myself that felt safer to keep nearby than to fully release. And because they lived under the bed, they followed me into rest. Every night I slept above decisions that hadn't been settled, even if I couldn't name them. When that hidden space finally lightened, the room changed in a way I hadn't expected. It felt taller, as if something had lifted from the floor and taken the air with it. I slept deeper. I woke calmer. Not because everything was resolved, but because fewer things were quietly asking to be remembered. Seasonal items became easier to recognize for what they were: temporary, optional, belonging to another time rather than to every night of the year. What surprised me most was what happened next. Once the big hidden weight was gone, my attention sharpened. Suddenly the smallest things felt louder. A little bottle on a surface. A stack of papers that didn't belong. Tiny items that had blended into the background now stood out clearly, as if the room itself was saying, "Now that we've handled the heavy stuff, let's talk about these." It usually starts with the smallest things. A lotion you meant to finish but didn't love. A perfume that smelled nice once but never quite felt like you. Papers you set down because you were tired and told yourself you'd look at them later. None of these items are loud on their own. They don't take up much space. But they have a way of multiplying quietly, filling corners and surfaces until the room feels like it's always asking a question. Each time your eyes pass over them, there's a tiny pause. Do I still need this? Should I keep that? Will I deal with this tomorrow? It's not a big decision, but it's a constant one. And those little moments of negotiation add up. You don't feel overwhelmed. You feel worn down. The bedroom, a place meant for rest, slowly turns into a low-level conversation you never agreed to have. I didn't realize how much energy those small choices were stealing until I cleared them away. Suddenly, the room stopped asking for permission. Surfaces felt honest again. Corners felt quiet. There was nothing waiting for approval or attention. And with that silence came a sense of ease I hadn't known I was missing. It wasn't dramatic. It was gentle, like finally setting down a bag you didn't know you'd been carrying. The bedroom became a no-decision zone, a place where my mind didn't have to weigh options or remember intentions. Everything there had already said yes to being part of my life. That kind of clarity does something wonderful. It gives your thoughts space to slow down. You don't need to manage your surroundings when they're already on your side. And once the little things stopped multiplying, something else happened. My eyes stopped skimming the room and started settling. I noticed the shape of the bed, the way the light fell across it at night. After all the surfaces and corners grew quiet, the heart of the room finally came into focus, waiting to be what it was always meant to be, a place to rest without negotiation. At the end of the day, there's a particular kind of tired that settles into your bones. Not the kind that needs fixing, just the kind that wants to be done. You turn down the light, pull back the covers, and all you want is to lie down and let the day loosen its grip. But sometimes even the bed seems to ask for more than you have left. Pillows stacked just so. Extra blankets folded, unfolded, shifted again. Sheets that tangle instead of welcome. What should feel like relief turns into one last effort. I remember nights when I'd stand there for a moment looking at the bed, calculating. Which pillows come off? Where do they go? Do I really need all of this? It wasn't frustration exactly, more like quiet disbelief that rest required so much preparation. The bed had become something to manage instead of something to receive me. And when you're already tired, even small obstacles can feel heavier than they are. Somewhere along the way, comfort got confused with abundance. More pillows meant more luxury. Extra linens meant being prepared. But what I learned is that true comfort doesn't overwhelm you. It invites you in. It says, "Come as you are." When the bed is layered with too much, your body doesn't soften right away. It hesitates. It stays alert, as if there's still something to arrange before rest is allowed. The nights changed when the bed became simpler. Fewer pillows, softer, familiar sheets. Nothing extra to move before I could lie down. Suddenly the bed felt open, like open arms instead of a display. I could ease into it without thinking. My shoulders dropped faster. My breath slowed without effort. Sleep stopped feeling like a process and started feeling like permission. There's something deeply reassuring about a bed that doesn't demand anything. No ceremony, no performance, just a place that understands you've already given enough for one day. When rest is welcoming instead of abundant, you don't have to earn it. You simply arrive. And that kind of rest, the kind that meets you without conditions, is exactly what the end of the day is meant to hold. There's a different feeling that can settle in after a thought like this, even if nothing in the room has changed at all. Sometimes just seeing a space differently is enough to soften it, to realize that the tension wasn't personal, it was environmental. And that understanding alone can be surprisingly steadying. If any part of this sounded familiar, it's because many people notice the same quiet patterns over time, the same little frictions, the same wish for rooms that feel kinder at the end of the day. You're not odd for feeling that way. You're not behind. You're simply paying attention. Later on, maybe tonight or another evening, you might catch yourself noticing something small, the way your eyes move through the room, or how your body feels when you lie down. Not as a task, just as awareness. That's often where change begins, without effort or pressure. Thank you for being here for this moment, for listening, for allowing the idea of ease to exist, even briefly. Wherever this finds you, I hope the rest of your day feels unhurried, and that when the night comes, it meets you gently.